offer the best grooming products for you. Yes, all natural and handcrafted too. We wanna help be your swagger, your style, class, and luxury. We make our products tailor-made for you with high quality. Yeah, so get in style with the black, yeah. Grooming company, to give you swagger, style, class, and luxury. In luxury, yeah. The black gentleman, yeah. Company, to give you swagger, style, class, and luxury. In luxury, yeah.
Located at www.theblackgent.com. Yo. What's good? It's Stormybman, and I am back. Welcoming you to Nerds on Culture with Stormybman for this Monday, May 13th, 2024. And this is number 85 in the series of Nerds shows. And we're highlighting a classic from the Western genre, Once Upon a Time in the West. And we are going to talk about this classic Western. If you guys are not aware of this film, shame on you. Because this is one of those directed by Sergio Leone, who is most famous for the Man with No Name series that we recently did a profile on. But this one here starred some classic actors from Hollywood at that time at the height of their careers. And it was released December 21st, 1968. And if you haven't had a chance to see this one, it is highly recommended. This film right here has performances by the actors and lead actress that's in this film that stand out for the Western genre, but also the music score. The music score is so famous that you have heard riffs off of this soundtrack for various films that came later in American cinema, in international cinema, and even in the Hong Kong films. Kung Fu films ripped the film's music because there were a great deal of tracks on this film that are very memorable, and they played them throughout the film, so you kind of remember it. Like if you've seen films like Jaws or Star Wars, there's certain themes that play during the action scenes and so forth that remind you, oh, that's Star Wars, or that's this or that. And that's what it was for this film, Once Upon a Time in the West. So we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening. And as I welcome my partner in crime here, we got Drew Titan in the building. What's going on, man? What's going on?
Man, I always knew about this film. Never actually sat down and watched it until today. And I was thoroughly entertained. This is a classic. And I'm going to buy a harmonica after watching this. This was dope, man. This was dope, man. I loved it.
And to kind of take people through it, there's a lot of non-dialogue acting in this film. A lot of reactionary stuff that drives the story forward. You get a lot of pans of the capturing the eyes of the actors and actress in here and their reactions, facial expressions and stuff without the dialogue. And sometimes that's hard to do when you have someone that is not versed in that. And what we noticed in this film is that some actors can get away with that because they have what they call charisma and screen presence.
Yeah.
And here you had Henry Fonda, who is definitely a man of Hollywood height and fame at that time. And then we are introduced to Charles Bronson, who starred also as one of the men in the Magnificent Seven. But here he plays a stoic, silent guy who plays that harmonica. And that harmonica that he plays has an integral part of the story that you find out. And it's like, wow, when it comes together. You and I were just talking behind the scenes, and you were saying, man, the way this film comes together at the end, it's like, whoa.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? When he starts playing a harmonica. Remember that scene in Return of the Dragon where Bruce walks up with the brothers from the restaurant, and they go to the mob boss's office, and he walks up and you hear the whistle first.
He's whistling, yeah.
Whistling. I said, did he pick
well, you
that
know,
up?
he took a lot from the spaghetti westerns, Bruce
Yes.
did when he was making Way of the Dragon.
Yes.
He you know, his wife talked about it. Even there are some cues from this film. The music cues from this film are in Way of the Dragon.
Wow. Well, I picked right up on that. I said, man, Return of the Dragon. He came in whistling, man. But I mean, listen, man, that was wow. If you haven't seen this film, I recommend it, man. And for those of you younger cats, listen. When you play a video game like Red Dead Revolver, everything in that game they got from these spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
Everything from the music, from the storyline. You see the elements in movies like this, man. I really enjoyed this film. This is a film that I couldn't appreciate back when I was in my teens. This is something I appreciate later. You know, but this was fun, man. This was a fun, and like you said, those silent points with the stare downs, and it's like you putting it together. It's suspenseful. You're like, oh, whoa, what's about to happen? I mean, yeah. Had
like
it all,
that,
man.
The opening scene that goes on for about 10 or 12 minutes.
Yeah.
There's really no dialogue. I think there's like one thing spoken when they put that.
It was like in slow motion.
Yeah.
And I was crazy. I was bugging because I was like, is that a brother?
Yeah, Woody Strode.
It was a brother. I was like, look at that. Yeah, he didn't last too long, but
and he was famous back in that era of playing in films. You know, he had a look that went along with those stories that he starred in. He definitely had a certain kind of look, Woody Strode, and he could, not only was he a good actor, but he was a physical presence too. He was a well-built gentleman that, you know, he sported a bald head before bald heads became fashionable, because back then the bald head person you knew was Yul Brynner, you know, and it's here he comes as a black man playing in these films. And though he's playing one of the lead character, Frank's cronies, those guys in the opening scene, they met their fate kind of quickly, but at the same time, it established what we were gonna be seeing, you know, how the film starts off. But what I was saying about that opening scene was it went on for about 10, 15 minutes almost, that there was really no dialogue. They were just waiting for a train to come in the station. One of them was having a hard time with a fly flying around him.
That was disgusting.
Yeah. Then Woody was sitting there, and he was sitting under a water drip.
Water drip was hitting him in the head.
And he put his hat on, and he was catching the water on his hat.
He could drink it.
And then it accumulated so much, he was drinking the water off of his hat. And just, you know, can you imagine living back in those times, like the Old West, where like waiting for a train to come and you don't have a clock, you don't have, you know, you just got to wait for it to arrive. And it's like you got so much time to kill and everything.
That platform was a splinter fest.
Yeah.
That my gosh, man, I don't know how we survived in those days. I mean, you had you know what? The immune system must have been extremely strong because he was drinking water out that hat. I'm like, that's not sanitary
Yeah.
at all. I'm like, God, dog, man, that was
You know what
crazy.
else wasn't sanitary? When the guy who was waiting for the woman to come to town, where he and his family, they were setting up the table outside for they were
Oh,
gonna have a feast and everything.
that was
That was
tough.
outside, and it was wind blowing and dust blowing, and they
I was
had
like, is
their
that
food out on the
going on
table
the
and stuff.
cob? You know what I'm saying? All the insects could get on it.
Yeah, and she was
Cooked
cutting
food.
bread out there, his daughter cutting
Yeah.
bread. So it's like, but think about it. That's back then. It wasn't a lot of sanitary. It's like
It was disgusting, actually. I was looking, whenever I watch like movies like that, I always like envision myself like, what if I was around back then? How did they do certain things? Like use a toilet, and the son was about to go to the train station.
Yeah.
And that opening scene was brutal. I said, man, this is how we starting this film?
That's why, when I picked it and I told you, and I did put the feeler out there for 78. Hopefully he'll be able to join us this evening. If not, it's okay. But I was saying that you got to see this film so we can talk about it because, just think about right now, like a lot of what gets released to the theaters, and we got all these apps and stuff now, so they put a lot of content out like that, and some of it is good quality, and then a lot of it is a bunch of junk, but when you go back and you start looking in this, and I told you I'm a film buff. I have so much. Yeah, I love my kung fu films, but I have so much in my library, man, that I can talk films like this for about 2 years before I run out of movies to talk about. And this was one that when it crossed my mind, after we had did The Man with No Name, I was like, and we should come back and talk about this one because this is a great film. And it's long. 2 hours, 45 minutes, people. If you guys thought you were enjoying yourselves watching Endgame and Infinity War, this is kind of along the lines of that as far as the length of the movie. But once you get into the story, you can't wait to see what's happening next. And Drew, I'll let you go ahead and tell us about Henry Fonda playing Frank.
What did I text you? As soon as I said, Frank is a douche, man. That dude is a douchebag. And he had the coldest stare with those blue eyes, man.
Right?
That dusty face and that blue eyes, man. I said, man, the opening scene, man, I don't want to ruin it, and because I really would like the audience to go watch it, but that opening scene, I'm like, huh? All of that? I said, what's going on in this film? And you find out what's going on later, but it's like, my gosh. But he played that role, man. He played that role. I bought it, man. That was some acting because it's not often you see a villain that you can get mad at. I got mad at that villain. I said, oh my gosh, how could you do that? It was just like ridiculous, man. And it's in the name of a cause, but it's like, oh my gosh, man, all of that. And it's a typical corruption and double crossing and unlikely alliances towards the end of the film. Unlikely. It's like, oh man, it's crazy, man. It was just crazy, but I enjoyed it. It took me for a ride. So it's safe to say that this film. You want to look for films that take you on emotional roller coasters like that because you appreciate it more. In this film, like I said, it had everything. I wouldn't be able to appreciate it in my teens because I didn't have an attention span like that. This was something I sat back. I came home from the gym. I had some food and I'm watching. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, dang. And you want to be on these emotional roller coasters. And it's a great film, man. Very underrated. Mike 202 says, what year did the movie come out? 68, right?
68, yeah.
And
December.
salute everybody in the chat. Salute everybody in the chat. It came out 68. 68.
Yeah, and check this out. This film, the head stars were Claudia Cardinale, and she's the female lead in the movie. Then, of course, Henry Fonda, Jason Robards. These are three actors and actresses that were noted at the time. But Charles Bronson, who basically is the central character in this film, he's the fourth lead actor. So if you think about it, he stole the show with his performance in here. And did you get this about him? Because I got a chance to watch a little bit more of it before we did the show tonight. And particularly I focused on that last quarter of the film. Did you notice how Charles had several types of looks? And he had this one glaze where when the camera is on him, you can't tell if he's smiling or smirking. Did you catch on to that?
He was creepy looking.
Right.
He was creepy looking.
And
it's
he
like
had those eyes that were like squinty.
Yeah.
So you couldn't read his it's like, is that a smile there, or is that a smirk, or is that a look, a pensive?
And I'm gonna tell you something else about Charles Bronson. He was always the kind of guy where I read the name, but I really wasn't clear on his ethnicity.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear on it.
He is Latin descent.
He's Latin.
He's Latin descent.
Okay.
Yeah. But he took a stage name. I see 78 out there. He says he's not feeling well tonight. Yeah,
he was sick earlier.
Yeah. Get well soon, brother. Appreciate you.
And thank you for the email, brother. Thank you for the email.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you for the email. And, thank you for the super chat as well. Man. But yeah, he took a stage name and by design, because he knew he had an exotic look. And the producers of the films that he starred in, they knew he had an exotic look. Because believe it or not, people, during that time, Hollywood was extremely biased against non-white actors.
Yeah.
Extremely. So much to the degree that they couldn't even get someone of a native descent or even Asian background where they could be prominent in film roles. They would opt to put a Caucasian person in that role and put makeup on their faces to tan their skins and stuff. It was just so for Charles Bronson to move through that era, and then the early 70s up into almost the 1980s with his Death Wish films and other films that he starred in, he was a groundbreaking actor and performer with what he was able to accomplish, and well respected because he made some good films, Charles Bronson.
Yeah, he sure did. He sure did. And like I was telling you earlier, I knew him from the Death Wish series, which we should
yeah, we got to do that one day too. We got to get into those.
And that's if y'all have never seen it, it's rough, man. It's rough. It's a tough, rough watch, but my gosh. But when I saw him in the Westerns, my dad was one that said, oh, well, he got his start doing Western movies.
Yeah.
And I never sat down and watched this until today.
Yeah.
And the guy's a hell of an actor, man. The guy's a hell of an actor.
And again, he's from that era of guys who didn't need a lot of dialogue. He was a physical guy, so he would, he could do stunts and he could do fight scenes and stuff like that, where there were actors who didn't want to get dirty. Charles Bronson didn't mind doing those things, especially if it could sell the characters that he was playing, more earnestly. So he was able to do that. And in this film,
how old was he when he passed?
Who, Charles Bronson?
Yeah, because you know.
Let me double check here because I got this thing pulled up with them talking about the actors. Charles
No,
Bronson. He was 81 when he passed.
And what year was that?
He passed August 30th, 2003.
Yeah, he always had an old face. But he was 81, so he was up there.
Yeah,
he was up there. Charles Bronson, for you guys that
but
don't
he
know,
wasn't considered up there when he was prominent in his acting career because Charles was born November 3rd, 1921.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he was in his 40s when he made his fame, you know.
Right. This was a guy, if he stuck
And
around.
he served in the U.S. Armed Forces, too. He was in the Army, and he was a corporal.
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture of him walking with a lady. He had on some bell bottoms. He was in shape, man. In the picture that I saw, he was in shape. He was in shape. This guy was a beast. I would have loved to have seen him do some work with Chuck Norris in the 80s. That would have been awesome.
You know what's interesting? It was guys like him that paved the way for people like Chuck Norris. It's like it's amazing because he was and see, that's why a show like this is good. Because we could give these guys their flowers. You know what I'm saying? Because we didn't have social media like what we have now. And the fact that we could talk about, you know, these actors and actresses who were so prominent in films that when cinema really meant something. Like cinema is very watered down now. It's nowhere near what it used to be. But, you know, going to a movie, and we've talked about this many times on this show because this is what we profile a lot as films and music and stuff like that. But going to a movie was an experience of, like, you know how people want to get together and go to a concert or something like that. Going to movies were kind of like that to a smaller degree, of course.
Right.
But you had your pick of, if a Charles Bronson movie was coming out or a Clint Eastwood movie was coming out, you know, you went to the theater and saw these guys, Stuart Whitman and guys like that back in those days. And then during the 70s, when the blaxploitation films kicked off, you had people like Richard Roundtree and Ron O'Neal and, you know, Godfrey Cambridge and all of those actors. You know, it changed where people just gravitated toward the cinemas, you know?
Right. Man. That's I never thought about that. He paved the way for Chuck Norris. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that can you imagine what that would have been? A movie with him and Chuck Norris, like maybe like 83, 84? That would have been insane.
Dude, it would have been something. And I don't even think Chuck is still alive. Someone should ask him about that if they can.
I would love to ask him that.
You know,
we consider doing
like work with Charles Bronson, you know, and I'm sure Chuck would have been like, "Oh yes," you know. Charles Bronson had the heat, man. And I'm gonna tell you something. Some people might not believe this because he had a particular chiseled look in his face or whatever. But Charles had the ladies too. You know, he was that kind of dude. Came across. You know what it was? It was that rugged machismo type of deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and he was married several times. Harriet Tendler was his first wife. They married in 1949 and divorced in 1965. Then he was married to Jill Ireland, who was a Hollywood socialite. They married in 68, and she passed away in 1990. And then he married Kim Weeks in 1998. And they were married until he passed away.
Well, at least he believed in marriage.
Yeah, he did. And he has four children surviving. And
any of them in acting anyway?
No, it's just, you know, they went on with their lives. But yeah, he Charles Bronson, man. My dad used to love Charles Bronson films. He was always, but again, he was in so many things. Like he did a film called The Mechanic, of course, and I have that on DVD. The Stone Killer. That was a famous film from 1973. I remember that. And then, of course, he did a Mr. Majestic in 74, Hard Times in 75. That's that film where he was fighting and brawling like in the 30s or something. And St. Ives. I remember this film. It came out after Jaws and films like that because we were going into the animal films, scaring people and stuff. King Kong, Jaws, Orca, the killer whale, and this film that Charles starred in, The White Buffalo. I remember seeing that in the theaters, Drew and chat. That was a very good film where he was trying to hunt down this famous buffalo that was out on the range killing people and stuff.
What?
And he was hired to try to track this buffalo down and kill it and everything. Very good film, you know, and I saw that as a kid. I was a kid when I saw that film, but it stayed in my mind. I remember that film very well. He also played in other films like Telephone and Assassination. And you know, he just the guy, hey man, he, like I said, he broke ground. He broke ground. Just like if you could think about actors like Jimmy Smits, you know, who was native, you know, background, and people like he and Charles Bronson having their time of fame in Hollywood. They were special folks because, you know, Hollywood wasn't doing that at that time. That's why Bruce Lee was so special, because Bruce Lee, had he lived, he would have been probably like a big time director or something eventually, because that's kind of like where he wanted to go. He wanted to get into directing. But think about how famous he became, and he passed away when his first Hollywood film got released. It's like, just think about that. What could have been? But he was the first Asian superstar internationally and in Hollywood.
Yeah, superstar. That's a level up from star. It's a superstar. Bruce Lee is a superstar. Don't worry, I took care of it already.
Yeah.
I took care of it. There's no need to even address it. We're rock stars in here.
Yeah. So now Henry Fonda, listen, this guy, father of Jane Fonda, of course, and Peter Fonda. This guy, he was a very prominent Hollywood star. He was born in 1905 and passed away in 1982, August of 82.
Wow.
And that guy there, he was 77 when he passed away, and he was married a multitude of times, far many more times than maybe twice as much as Charles Bronson. But he was very well known in Hollywood, and I want to say his career and his family was kind of like the Kennedys of Hollywood or something. It's you know, that kind of thing. He served in the military as well, fought in World War II, as did Charles Bronson. And his filmography was very all over the place with the type of movies that he played in. he was just kind of like a guy. He played in love stories. He played in suspense dramas and stuff like that. That's why to see him play this villain in this film, it kind of put him in a different place. You know what I mean? So it was like definitely a guy who he was an old school Hollywood star. He was an old school Hollywood star, but his career was kind of changing and taking different directions as he, was getting in his twilight years of his life. So
that's an interesting take. Hollywood going through some like changes at that point? Like every decade they go through some changes because 68 is close to the 70s. Like every 5 years there's some sort of significant change.
Yeah, and I would imagine like when an actor like he had a striking role like he did in this film that we're talking this evening, probably had to turn down a lot of roles after that. That like they want him to play it again. Can you be a villain in this this film or whatever? And of course, that kind of takes some of the love of things out for certain actors. I think like guys that were the co-stars like Jason Robards, he was a good actor, that also a character actor. He passed away in December of 2000. He was 78 when he passed away. He's from Chicago, born in Chicago in July of 1922. And I liked him in this role is that he played in this film. I was trying to figure him out throughout the movie because, he always kept his hand on his gun. He always looked like he was ready to start something or finish something. But you know what it was? He was one of those guys that, even in real life, guys like him is like, he was a survivor. You know what I mean? He was a survivor. So whatever whichever way the current is going, he could flow with it. But if you rub him the wrong way, you're gonna have a gunfight with him or whatever. But it was like, that whole thing. And when his character finally, later in the film, we find out some things happen. You didn't even know, you know what I'm saying? Because he was so cool in how he, kept himself going and everything. Because when Harmonica, Charles Bronson's character, was telling the lady, I gotta go, and Jason Robards was like, yeah, I gotta go too. It's like he was like, all the action is getting ready to leave, so I'm gonna leave too.
Let's talk about the plot, because it didn't waste any time. Like, because in the intro of the film, you're like, what's going on? What are these three dudes in waiting on? And then you find out.
Yeah.
And then you go to the house, or the scene with the house, and you're like, what's going on here? And then we're introduced to Frank, and then that's when I text you. I said, Frank is a douche.
Man, Frank.
Goodness. But what the plot of the movie? What's the plot? What does it say about the overall plot of the film?
Okay. I've got something pulled up here. It says that a train arrives at the old west town of Flagstone. It's a very unincorporated area. They're building railroads during this time.
Right.
So this particular town, Flagstone, the train is going to be coming through that area. And there was a guy who was called Brett McBain. Brett McBain was a kind of affluent guy. He had a little money, but he knew that the train was coming. So he had hedged a wager on the future by thinking about, if the train is going to come through this area, I can build a station and stuff like that where I could employ, and people will have to pay. I could have stores and stuff. He was a entrepreneur. He was thinking like that, and he already had a family of children. He had a daughter and two sons. And he had met another woman that he secretly married, but he hadn't told his children yet. And he had her coming to visit because he had sold her on that idea and promise of what he was going to be doing, with the future. So when she sets out to come to the town, she finds out that he and the family have been taken out. But
that was bad.
What precedes that is the film opens with a train coming through the town of Flagstone, and there's these 3 bandits out there that are waiting for the train, and they're waiting for someone in particular to get off the train so they can take him out. Now, this person that they're waiting for, it turns out to be the character played by Charles Bronson. He's been referred to throughout the film as Harmonica because he plays the harmonica all the time. And typically he plays the harmonica before some killing goes down. It's like, how they put that together like that? It's like he's playing that tune on the harmonica. So when you hear that, something is getting ready to go down. So he gets off the train, but not on the side. Like, when people, what do they call it? Dislodge from the train.
Right.
When the train came to town, it was just a bailiff that threw some bags and stuff off the train, and they looking around. They like, nobody get off the train, and the train pulls out of the station, and they're facing a different way because nobody got off the train. And then they hear that harmonica playing in the backdrop, and they turn around and look, and there's Charles Bronson standing across the way.
Yep.
And they looking at him, and they get their guns ready and everything. And he said, you guys got a horse for me? And they were like, they looked around, they was like, we're what did he say? We're 3. He's like, we're one. It was 3 guys, so he's like, we're 1 horse short. And he's like, nah.
I said, no.
You're too many.
too many. Yup. And he lit their ass up. I said, oh man, this is what we doing?
That's how the film starts, y'all.
That's how the movie starts. I said, oh man, this is what we doing here? I like this. I said, nah, you were a horse short. He said, nah, you brought too many. Boom, 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 boom. I was like, oh, all right.
Man. I loved it. Well, when I put it on a couple of days ago, I was watching it, right? And of course, I've seen it before, and I just hadn't seen it in a while. I just crack up laughing like I'm doing right now because that was the entertainment back in the day. Westerns, man, they settle things with the pistol, Jack. I mean, it's like they don't be playing. And he smoked them guys, and he went on into the town, right? Mm-hmm. But he knew who they were working for because that's who he was coming for. So it's like, and he has a past, but nobody knows it. But that woman, she comes to town and finds out that her husband is, he's been murdered and everything, and the kids, and even the little son, his small boy, who he had. You see a scene with him hunting. What was that, quail or something?
Wherever it was, got 2 of them.
Yeah, and they, that show the bonding of dad and son, which is an important thing when you're showing something like that. That means he's teaching his son how to become a man and how to hunt and stuff. Well, short time later, they get home and they getting ready for their feast and getting ready to receive they don't know it's his wife coming. And then here come Frank.
and they wiped out. What they call him? They called him a mad Irishman because he had red hair. The kids had red hair. They were Irish. They were like immigrants.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Don Irish was in the chat because I thought his entire bloodline got wiped out in that movie. Shots fired. Wait, hold on. Let me hit him with it. Let me hit him with it. Where's my damn?
Take that.
That's exactly what happened.
There you go.
This Mick want to show up talking, man. Your bloodline got wiped out in the movie. We saw it. Monica had to avenge you. Kill you, that little girl, the little boy, the teenage boy, the father.
And now you're going to join them.
And now you're going to join them. Get out of here. Penis eater. Well, anyway.
Man. But so, man. So
here comes Frank.
Yeah, Frank comes in, and what we find out is that Frank was hired as a hired gunman for a railroad tycoon.
Yep.
Who basically wants him to clear people out that live in that area and everything so that he can buy up all that land, because like the Irishman McBain, who had a plan of building a station there and everything, this railroad tycoon, he knows that if he takes over that land, he'll be a multi-millionaire, you know, opening up a town and building and stuff like that. But see what McBain had done already, and we find this out later as the film goes on, Drew and chat, is that he used his money to already buy building supplies and everything. He was all set, you know, to get things cooking. And his woman, when she was coming to town, she didn't know she was coming for that. Her name was Jill. She didn't know all of that. But later, when they were settling his estate and stuff, she found out that that's what it was. So she became like a prominent figure in the town because she inherited his wealth.
Yep.
You know, she was his wife. And so Frank was like, oh, I gotta get rid of her. You know what I'm saying? And he, you know, the story goes on from there. But let me tell you guys something. It's a damn good story. But a lot of it is acted out without a lot of dialogue. They say little things here and there to drive the story along, but you got to pay attention to who's talking and who's doing certain things during the film. And it's real cool how it plays out.
You talk about women always being on the side of survival. Now, you know what scene bothered me, right?
Yeah.
You know, that bothered me. And I'm like, was she doing that for survival or she wanted to? But she does understand that this man not only shot your husband, but he eradicated his entire bloodline right there.
Yeah, the bloodline.
What was she doing?
You know what, man? Fear makes people do strange things. And he told her while he was like, yeah, it's a shame I'm gonna have to kill you anyway. It was like,
I ain't get it, man. I ain't get it. I was like, oof, she ain't cut his throat or nothing. What's going on? But you watch it as a man. And see, again, I wouldn't have been thinking about that.
You know what? To her defense, though, Drew, we didn't see where she came from, but it's obvious that she came from a different place than these folks. You know what I'm saying?
She came from New Orleans.
Okay, yeah. So
from New Orleans, yeah.
You know, so they, you know, maybe they was a little more, and it's kind of interesting. What I'm about to say is a little more civilized in New Orleans than they was out there where she came to. Because out there, boy, it was cutthroat city out there.
Man, you want to talk about Wild Wild West?
Man,
holy cow! That was like, I'm like, why is she? I mean, she even got a knife under a pillow or something. What's going on here? Like, man, unbelievable. But it's funny how Frank goes from being that evil character to later on becoming that shade of gray. It's like you remember what he did, but now he's in a position where,
and I only think that is because his options were shrinking. You know
yeah,
how they say the ground is shrinking under your feet,
oh yeah,
and that's what was happening. But let's talk about Harmonica's revealed background. We don't have to reveal it to the audience, but
right.
when you found out that, wasn't that crazy, man?
Okay, the train scene when he slapped him, when they caught him,
Yeah.
and he asked him his name, and he said one name, and he said, "He's dead." Then he said another name. He said, "He's dead too." So then he slapped him and said, "You, who are you?" He was like, "Frank." He was like, "Tell him to chill." You begin to suspect not only has he taken this job to do whatever, but he has detailed information about Frank, and that worried him, that bothered him. But damn, how do I explain this without revealing to the chat too
Well,
much?
let's just say that the harmonica is integral in knowing Frank's background, because you know the fact that someone can hold on, this movie was remade in a kung fu film.
Mhm.
Along Comes a Tiger. I did it on my Kung Fu Film Focus, starring Don Wong Tao. Not as good as this, of course, but the story, the background, and in Along Comes a Tiger, Don Wong's character doesn't do a lot of talking at all. He's like a mute, but he
Mhm.
can talk, but he's giving the impression that he's mute until later in the movie when he has to talk and reveal who he is and everything. But man, it's just good storytelling. This movie, man, was written by Sergio Leone and Sergio Donati. And Sergio had retired from Western films after the Man with No Name series, but they came back to him and asked him to come back and make this film. And he really didn't want to do it. Excuse me. So they had a couple of other writers who contributed to this, Dario Argento and Bernardo Bertolucci. And they convinced him, and they say, what if we get Henry Fonda to play in this role? What do you think? And he was like, oh, it's kind of hard to turn down Henry Fonda, right? So that was the beginning of getting ready to get this film made. But
Henry Fonda was a big deal back then.
he was.
The
He was.
legendary father of his daughter Jane Fonda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
Henry was a big deal back then. And that man. So when they picked up, pretty much you're saying that Henry Fonda was the reason why this was he went through with this. He went through with directing this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't turn that down. You gotta hop on it. And to me, it's a classic. Now, after seeing what I saw, and if you got a short attention span, don't worry, there ain't even that much dialogue. It's easy to follow. It's very easy to follow. But those the one-liners in this day. Yo, wait a minute. The train scene where Harmonica was cuffed. He was cuffed up,
Yeah.
and what's his name came and pretty much saved him. The scene where he put the boot down and the guy was walking up,
Yeah.
and he didn't know the he didn't know the damn gun was in the boot. Boom! I said, "Oh my gosh, man, man, that was disrespectful, man. That was disrespectful." Yeah, I know, Reef. This was 2 hours of grade A entertainment. I was thoroughly entertained, man. I was
Listen,
thoroughly entertained.
you know, another thing about Westerns is the funny way that they decide to kill people. Cause you know, it's like you could always, you know, but like you said, that boot scene, that was like real creative, right? It's like
That was mad disrespectful. I
1,000
said,
ways to
"Oh
die.
man, that was
And oh
clever,
boy,
man."
the train, that train tycoon, he got his too. Remember? It's
Oh
like,
man,
listen,
he left
man.
him. He could have
That's why
blicked him off.
they say you call yourself digging a grave for somebody, dig too, because you're gonna find yourself laying
Find
right
himself
there.
in it.
Literally.
And I think he had tuberculosis, right? The character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Do you
unique.
remember when Frank was telling him, compete with me? He was like, you come up here, you can't even stand on your own 2 feet. He kicked the man's crutches from
Man, that was funny. That was funny, man.
the dude's crutches.
But I'm gonna tell you something. That
Oh,
was mad funny. I'm gonna tell you something. When I say that shade of gray, because Frank was rolling deep with some gangsters.
some Bogarts. They used
Yeah,
to call
man. And they went off to the highest bidder, and they were coming to get him. And that's when Frank became the bit of the baby face. That's like a wrestling term. He became the baby face, and you're like, oh, well, Frank got to get through this. But then I'm like, he slayed an entire family in the beginning of the film. Are we rooting for Frank now? What are we doing? It's like, what's going on? That's what I'm saying. It takes you on an emotional roller coaster. Like, I'm rooting for Frank now? My gosh. Crazy stuff.
the debauchery.
Yeah. But you find out what he did, it wasn't personal. He was hired to do a job. But my gosh, you couldn't just kill homie and keep it moving. They ran through everybody. And when she comes to the house, everyone's looking, they take their hats off, and they on the dinner table where the corn on the cob and pheasants was sitting there cooked a second ago. I mean, everybody was dead. I said, oh, this is how the movie just started.
They had to clear the feast off the table and put the bodies.
Yo, you know people ate their food, right? You know they ate the food. You're like, oh, they dead. Pass the corn on the cob real quick. Get that bread. Pick up that little boy. That's pheasant. Oh man, no, let's not dig the grave yet. She coming? Oh my gosh, man.
Man, that's crazy, right? It was like
that was crazy.
Hey, wipe that blood off of right there. We got
wipe that blood. That pheasant. Any blood get on that pheasant? My gosh. Oh man, that was bad. That was all bad, man. They got their ass. Hold on. That was weird, but now we find ourselves rooting for Frank. I mean, goodness. My gosh. I'm like, am I really rooting for Frank now? Hey man, it was a crazy alliance. But could you put up the poster for the movie real quick? I want to point something out.
Sure. 1 second here. The poster.
Okay, that one. Okay, do you have the other one where it was more up like a silhouette?
Oh, is that this
one?
one?
That one. Yeah. I want to point something out. This is something that they've done in a lot of movies. The men are always standing. You notice the women are always like in a submissive position.
Yep.
They did it in Star Wars. They did it here. They did it in a few movies. Some movies aren't even like the blaxploitation films. The ladies was always partially dressed and laying on the floor or in a very submissive position. It was very noticeable, I'll say. And this is you look at Charles Bronson's character on the left, that's harmonica. And you look at You look at Frank on the right, and you notice what's his name in the middle? I forget his name already.
Jason Robards.
Yeah, he was like an in-betweener.
Right.
He had a bounty on his head for something he did, but he wasn't a bad guy. So he's like an in-betweener. And notice he's like crouching.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So the positioning, what I learned from someone that actually does advertising, the positioning is done purposely.
Mm.
You know what I mean? That's just something I just want to point out. Yeah, K Cozy, this is a movie from 1968. They have it on Amazon Prime. 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's worth the watch. This is a very good film. Very, very good film. Yeah, that's just something I know. So I want to point that out to the audience. This is that's the dude in the middle with the boot trick.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's funny, man. That was funny, man. But this is a fun film, man. How many Westerns did Charles Bronson do?
Now that is a good question. As I look up,
I want to see his body of work before Death Wish.
Yeah.
I know he did some television. I know that. He did some television.
Yeah, he did a little bit of television, but
honestly speaking, I didn't know he was that good, man. This character, I like characters like this, man. Very quiet, limited dialogue. He's not a screamer, doesn't get excited, and he's a complete badass.
Well, his film career started in 1951, believe it or not.
Whoa.
But he played a lot of small roles that and a few that went uncredited. And then he played in a film called Apache in 1953. Then he played in a film called Riding Shotgun, also from the same year. He was in Veracruz. Now that film right there is a Western that I actually have on DVD with starring Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster.
Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
Burt Lancaster from oh crap. Wait. Burt Lancaster. Oh.
The Ten Commandments.
10 Commandments. There you go.
Yeah. And then from there, he started playing in different films, but his next big Western role was the Magnificent Seven in 1960. He played in a film called Kid Galahad.
Mm-hmm.
He was in The Great Escape with that was my man Steve McQueen and James Gardner. Charles Bronson was in there with him and Donald Pleasance. He was in The Dirty Dozen.
Dirty Dozen.
And that was in 1967. And of course, that had him and Ernest Borgnine, Jim Brown, John Cassavetes, George Kennelly, all of those guys, The Dirty Dozen.
I bet the audience didn't know that term riding shotgun was that old.
I know, right?
Didn't know that. We're talking about the 50s, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely.
Then he was also in another film called Villa Rides, and that's a 1968 film with Robert Mitchum. So he did his share of Westerns, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then starting in 1970, he started playing in some different types of films like Violent City. And
it was downhill from there, man.
Yeah.
As far as violence is concerned, it just got crazy. Holy cow.
And Jill Ireland, who he ended up marrying, and Telly Savalas was in there with him. The Valachi Papers, I remember that film. That's a mafia film.
Mm-hmm.
The Mechanic from 1972. That's where, if you saw the one starring Jason Statham, Jason Statham, it's hard for me to say his last name for whatever tongue
You can't
tied.
say that 3 times without dying.
Yeah, he's that's a remake of Charles Bronson's film, The Mechanic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. See, you got to be a little long in tooth like Stormybman to really go back there and pull up some of this stuff. You know, people call me a historian, but I guess I'm more of a historian than in other places as well, because I've been around to see some of this stuff, you know. But yeah,
wow. Yeah, I did not know that.
He did a film called The Stone Killer. That was one of those neo-noir films, and you know, along the lines of what would come later, Death Wish and stuff like that. So, you know, man, Charles Bronson, as I said earlier, he was really out here, bro. He did a lot of stuff, and he was in a lot of shoot 'em ups. You know, his last Death Wish film was Death Wish 5, The Face of Death, and that was in 1994.
Yeah, I remember that.
His television stuff, he appeared on television starting in 1955 all the way up to 1999. He's appeared in television shows. Some of the television shows that we may be remembering him in, he was in Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Gunsmoke, The Fugitive from 1967, Raid on Entebbe, a TV film, Act of Violence, The Sea Wolf, which was a television film, and a couple of other films, television films, that Family of Cops and Family of Cops 2 and 3. So he, you know, man, Charles Bronson, man, he had a fulfilled career as a performer. He really did.
That's great for him, man. It really is. It's great for I can't wait to do a focus on him, because he deserves it, man. This was a tough guy, man. You know what else? Let's write this down. Scenes that were hard to watch. Scenes that were hard to watch.
You know what comes to mind right away? The Crying Game, man. That movie right there, dude. I always, when something like that, it's like,
Stormy, when that scene happened, you know, I didn't finish the film, right? I can't tell you what happened after that, because when they put the camera down and we saw what was going on, I got up and I just walked out. I was like, all right, well, I'm good here. I'm all right.
And I told you about that film that I saw at the theater as a kid, The Incredible Melting Man.
Oh, yeah.
That scene where he was standing outside that lady's home. It was his woman or something, you know, she saw him, you know, in the hospital, but he had started deteriorating real bad, and he was trying to get in touch with her. He was standing outside her home, back in the trees and the bushes and stuff, and the camera was on him, and his ear fell off. I was like, oh. So you know, people it looked like he started to look like pizza, you know, the sausage and cheese just running, you know, the Incredible Melting Man.
Wait a minute.
It was horrible.
Wait a minute.
And they never found a cure for that dude. He melted away. It's like,
oh man, the end of what you call it, sleepaway camp. It's on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I remember you told me about that, and you showed me that clip.
Oh my God! Imagine, we saw that when it came out in the 80s. So, and her face, the way they held it. Do you know she's on Instagram?
No.
She looks great, but they hire her to go to do appearances at like B-movie like functions, and she does the face, and she's fine looking at her on Instagram until she does the face. It just takes me like, oh man, no, She looks the same. She's just a lot older now.
Scenes that were hard to watch. Do you remember? Did you see the James Bond film, Skyfall?
I probably did.
That's the one when Javier Bardem played the guy that was the villain in that. And
he was a former 00.
Yeah.
And
and,
bro, I know what you're trying to say.
When you know, I'll save it for when we do the show.
That's gonna be a good one.
Wasn't that hard to look at?
When he did that, I said,
But you know what? It makes sense, doesn't it? Because everybody that, you know, when we saw it in Captain America, the First Avenger, when he was chasing the Hydra guy down.
Yeah.
And he said, Who are you working for? And the guy bit into the cyanide capsule.
Yeah.
And he was like, Hell Hydra. And he bit the cyanide capsule. Well, Javier Bardem's character in that film, he was like, what if your cyanide capsule don't kill you? Dude, can you imagine being one of those people? It's like
you be goofed up.
You were supposed to die. Oh. And you didn't. It's like, and now you left to deal with life like that. Oh my God.
Look, Young Deezy said The Fly.
Oh man.
When the original one, that's creepy. But the remake, when Jeff was pushing his face with Jeff Goldblum, when she was pushing his face and his jaw came off, we was in the theater like, it was crazy. He was like, it was crazy, man. Popcorn flew in the air. It was nuts. That was crazy. Oh, man. Yo, did you ever see I Spit on Your Grave?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Remember when she was in the tub with dude?
Yeah. You know what? Let me say something. Let me say something about that film. I never rooted for a woman so much until I watched that film. The only reason why I watched that film because I wanted to see how she got those dudes back. And I rooted for her, and she got and you know they remade the film?
Yeah, they remade it. I didn't even watch the remake. I didn't even watch that because I know what that was gonna do.
Yo, the payback in that film was like ridiculous, man.
I bet.
It was ridiculous. How she got that dude at the end. I said, man, I didn't think it would be this. I didn't think they could top the original one.
Hey, I got one for you. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Leatherface. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Phantasm.
Woo.
Yo, you know what? Let's stop right there. That show is going to be crazy. When we do, we got to get screenshots because you know how YouTube is. Let's get the screenshots of all of these films. And we just throw them up, man. Oh, man. Phantasm was bad. I mean, that was hard to watch.
How about Black Dynamite when they was filming that war scene? And then Lincoln Osiris had Ben Stiller's hands and his hands was gone. He was like, hey, I just want you to know something, man. What, man? He was like, this nigga ain't got no hands, man.
Oh, man.
Dude.
Oh, man. Yeah, look at Shogun says Hostel Part 2, Last House on the Left, man. All of those slasher films, holy cow, man.
Listen, I'm not here to promote blackface, but Robert Downey Jr. was the best blackface I ever seen, man. In that movie.
That character needs an entire 2-hour film on its own.
You remember I showed you where they had them behind the scenes clips where he did it?
Oh, man.
And they didn't put that on the DVD. I was pissed off. I was like, why didn't you show this dude? He had those guys in the hotel room in the shower on their knees. He was sprinkling Cheetos on them with potato chips or something. Get in that damn shower. He was like,
yo,
it was crazy.
Listen, I was not mad at that character at all. when we saw that in the movies, that was the closest I could ever be to being high. That's how hard I was laughing, because it was genuinely funny. Holy
man, he was sitting in that chair doing that interview. He's like, yeah, mama been gone. He's like, used to go to her house, play pinochle. And then the director in the movie came walking over there. Hey, what's going on, man? He snuck up and he was like, man, get off me. He was like, what's your problem?
Yo.
He was like, I'm sitting up here trying to talk about my mom, and you come over here. He's like, now you got to say sorry. He's like, sit your silly ass in that chair. Remember, he made him sit in that chair. Now say you sorry.
Say you sorry. Man, he played that role, man. I'm not mad at that.
They get two of them guys, him and Tom Cruise, who was playing Les Grossman in that movie.
Yeah.
Those two characters, bro.
When he got to dancing at the end of the movie, I was like, oh, man. Those guys played those roles, man.
Do you know when I first saw the movie, because I saw it in the theater, right? And it got released after Iron Man, the first Iron Man film.
Yeah.
I'm watching this. I was like, man, I couldn't stop laughing. But then when I saw Tom Cruise, at first, I didn't know it was Tom Cruise until I started looking at him, because it's like he had all the prosthetics on and stuff. Yeah. They gave him some big old hairy arms. Like, you remember when Robin Williams played Popeye?
Yeah.
They weren't quite shaped like Popeye's arms, but they were thick, and he had these thick, fat fingers with jewelry on. I was like, is that Tom? I was like, wait a minute. And then I realized, oh shit, that's Tom Cruise. He had that shirt unbuttoned, all that hair on his chest.
Man,
I was like, they are killing me with this movie, man.
That movie was perfect, man. That movie was perfect.
Tommy Davidson sitting up there in the chair in the barbershop talking shit about that Black Dynamite. I'm running things.
Oh,
remember they had that chase scene when he turned around and saw it was Black Dynamite standing behind him. He broke out and started running. They was running down the street, then they was running on the rooftop. It was like, how did he get up on the rooftop? They didn't even show him going up no stairs. They just on the rooftop. I'm like, man, that movie was cracking me up, man. Black Dynamite.
Oh, man. Too much.
I didn't know that Michael Jai White could be so funny, man. I never knew, but we got to do a show on that movie, too.
Oh, I can't wait.
My favorite scene is the pool hall scene. My favorite scene is the pool hall scene, Drew. Let me tell you something. That brother, he come into the pool hall, and McCallie Williamson was telling him, get out of here before we beat you like a broken mule. And he walks over to the door and flips the close sign on the door, but the sign said closed on both sides. When he walked, so it said closed, but when he flipped it, it said closed again. And then he turned around, and the first dude he hit, right, he knocks him through the glass window outside the pool hall. And then when they show back inside the pool hall, the next guy he hit is the same dude that he threw out the window. It's like that kind of stuff like that had me cracking up. But you got to be sharp to catch the humor because, like, they had a limited amount of stuntmen. Remember when one dude got slapped and he was like, man, you slapped me for real. Then they cut it and then they put a different actor in there. He was like, I guess the first guy was like, I ain't taking no stuff.
If you ain't seen no Dolomite films, you're not going to get half the jokes, man. Oh, man.
That's the all-time classic from that film. And we'll talk about it again because I can't get over this. When he broke out his nunchucks and he was fighting them guys in the pool hall and he was working the nunchucks and they slipped out his hand, but he kept fighting. And then the nunchucks came back to him like Captain America's shield or Mjolnir or something. The nunchucks came back to him. They slipped out his hand. He kept fighting. And then they came back to him.
Love that damn film, man.
That movie is crazy as hell, man. Love Black Dynamite, man. I love that film.
Oh man, love it.
Well, yeah, let's get some final words, man, because I know you got to do the pep talk.
Yeah, I recommend Once Upon a Time in the West. If you've never seen a full Western movie, this is a great start. This has everything you need: storyline, limited dialogue for people that's not into too much of dialogue, and a lot of suspense. And then there's that shade of gray with the quote unquote villain. A lot of double crossing and shoot 'em ups. Love that. And the climax of the film, you know, it lives up to expectations, man. So I recommend it, man. I recommend it. So hell yeah.
Yeah, well, once again, a great show, man. Thanks for joining me on this, and thanks for checking the film out so you could be, you know, and I'm sure it was worth it, right?
It was definitely worth it.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it.
But yeah, we'll be back again next week, everybody, for another Nerds show. I think I'm gonna let Drew pick out something for us for next week. But I really enjoy doing this, man. I really enjoy this show. We have a good time, we laugh and we reminisce. That's what it's all about. So
nostalgia.
Yeah. So shout out to the mighty LDBC. And take your positive energy over to Pep Talk, which will be starting in about 6 or 7 minutes. So appreciate everybody out there. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace.